everyone. We're going to be simulating ripped paper today. Don't you just love that edge? I sure do. And I like using it in my projects too. And it's actually pretty easy to simulate in digitally. We're going to be using a Procreate brush, just a standard one, modify it slightly, and a little bit of masking and some other tricks in terms of like layer blending and things like that. And it's a lot of fun, but it's also a really cool effect. So let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, I have a 12 by 12 at 300 dpi canvas open, and that translates out to 3600 pixels by 3600 pixels. And it doesn't really matter for this effect what size you have, but it's nice to know what it is just in case like things show up a little bit differently in terms of resolution for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out by creating a pattern paper. We're going to start with a color palette here, and I'm going to use Rain Boots, which is available for free. I'll leave a link in the description below, but available for free instant download from my site. And I'm going to go ahead and use this black color for that and just dump that right in there. And then I'm going to add a new layer on top, and I'm going to choose this cream color here, and I'm going to go choose a pattern. Now I'm going to leave a link at the end of the video for creating a diagonal pattern, because I think the diagonal might be really nice for this particular effect as well. But for what I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to go ahead and choose a pattern from my store. I think it's, yep, in Stripes and Diamonds. So if you're interested in purchasing, and if you do, thank you. I'll leave a link in the description below for that too. All right, and I like this little uneven row pattern at the bottom of this set. It looks like this. And so I'm going to select that, and it's a stamp. So all I have to do is just stamp right in the center there, and it lays it down for me. And actually, I want it to lay down just slightly differently, so I'm going to do that. Excellent. I like that now, just like it is. Okay, now for the time being, I'm going to turn off the visibility of this layer just for the next step, because I want to be able to see what I am doing. So we're going to make toggle that visibility right off there. And I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. And then I need to create a new brush. So let's do that. We're going to select our brushes. I'm going to go down to the calligraphy set. Comes standard with Procreate, and then I'm going to select this blotchy brush, but I want to make a duplicate because I want to change it just slightly. So we're going to slide that gently to the left, tap duplicate, and then tap that blotchy one, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a new name right now so I don't forget what I've done here, because I like to know which ones are originals and which ones I've done things to. And I'm going to call this Fine Thread because I am going to change the grain to Fine Thread. Okay, so as you notice, you can see that like there's blotches to this, and let's look at that grain real quick. It's awesome for certain applications, but not for what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and tap Edit, Import, Source Library, and this all comes with Procreate Standard. And we're going to just kind of scroll down until we see Fine Thread, and that's what we're going to select. And then I'm going to invert that because I want to kind of get the lines showing through that look sort of vertical. So when I'm satisfied, I'm going to go ahead and tap Done. And as you can see, it changes it, and it does look way more like paper, which is exactly what I want. So we're going to tap Done. Okay, now I want to create an edge for my torn sheet of paper. So let's see, did I tap white yet? Let's double tap to get white there. And let's see, I do have a new layer, right? Yep, okay. And now I'm just going to go along, and this is just for the edge of the paper itself. Okay, and we're just making it look like that. Perfect, good enough. Okay, now I'm going to turn this by tapping it into a reference layer, and I'm going to select reference. And then I'm going to create a layer above that. And now I'm going to switch over to sort of this light green, maybe robin's egg green, I don't know, color. And in a new layer, I'm going to go ahead and drop the color right on top of that line. And then I'm going to drop the color on the other side of the line. If it looks something like that, then with your pencil still pressing against the glass there, go ahead and draw it up until the gap is gone. So we want it to be like a full piece of paper there, and that's perfect. Okay. So now the next thing I want to do is when I rip paper, usually when anybody rips paper, it kind of bends, and so it catches the light and there's some shadows. So I'm going to simulate the shadows on the paper before we get to our actual rip. But I don't want to forget to turn off the reference here. So I'm going to go ahead and tap reference, or that reference layer, and turn off reference just like that. And we're going to come back to this reference layer just a little bit, but right now we're just going to forget about it. All right, so now we're going back up to that green layer, layer 4, and we're going to tap the plus to get a new layer, and then we're going to go ahead and select a clipping mask for that layer. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dial down the opacity to about 25% or thereabouts. And I'm also going to change the blending mode to color burn because we want to kind of make this look shadowy, but not over the top. Okay, and then I'm going to come over to my colors and I'm going to double tap right here to get 50% gray. And I'm going to choose a different brush. I'm going to go down to my textures and select this Grunge Brush. And I'm using it at 100% size. And the first thing I'm going to do is sort of kind of burn over here in the corners. That's what it sort of looks like I'm burning or something. But I'm just using gray and color burn. Okay, and then I'm going to come along this edge too. Now, right where the paper rips, that's where we're going to have some significant shadowing and in places and in other places not. So we're going to leave some of it untouched and then just kind of go through other parts, just like that. And then I'm going to kind of fill in here in the center, but not too much, just a little bit because I do want to leave some white. And then I want to take care of, it looks very edgy, so I don't want that. I want to soften that a bit. So I'm going to come over to my adjustment wand and select Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to draw this up to right around 5-6%, well, maybe even just a little bit more, 7 it looks like, to really sort of soften it. And I don't want lines in there, so I'm going to actually do this again. And I think I can go ahead and just leave it. I don't have to worry about blending now. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, I'm satisfied with that. Okay, so now let's go back to this layer 3 here, and actually let's go back to layer 2 and turn on the visibility. And then let's go back to layer 3, tap it, and tap it again to get the layer menu, and then tap invert. And now let's go back over to Gaussian blur. So adjustment wand, Gaussian blur, and then draw that up to, whoa, so not quite that fast. Somewhere around 15-16%, something like that. You can see that there is like what looks like a shadow now. So it looks like this page is floating on top of that page. It's a bit too much right now. So what we're going to do is go back over to the layer, select N, which stands for normal, and we're going to draw down the opacity just a bit. And I'm going to say somewhere around 50% is probably going to be just about right. That looks pretty good. We'll have to see in the end if we like that or not and adjust it again. Okay, now we're ready to go back up to layer 5 and create a layer above it. And I'm going to come back down to layer 4, but before I do, let's go over to the selection tools. We're going to tap select. We want to make sure that color fill is not selected. So we just want it, it gray. That's perfect. Okay, when we've confirmed that, we're going to go ahead and select, tap layer 4, tap it twice to get select and select. And then we're going to come back over to our color here, double tap to get white, and then we want to select the brush. So our brush that we need is the calligraphy one that we made, the fine thread blotchy. And then we're going to go back to our layers and we want to select that new layer we created. And we're going to create our white rip along the edge. And we don't want to go parallel to the rip that exists there, the edge that exists there, but we don't want to go over it either. So that's why we're selecting out the part that we don't want to cross over here. But we want to have a little bit of dimension because that's what paper would look like along here. So let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go along here. And then one thing I want to do is make sure that all the edges, the green, is covered. Okay. Like in here, I'm thinking it would be like maybe really big. And maybe here, a big gap too. Okay, and then along the edges and maybe right in there. But always making sure that I get the green off of the edge there. Okay. Like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. I like how it was out of control here and then kind of gets smaller right in there. That looks really, really good. Okay, now when you're satisfied with that and all your, oops, here's a green edge. I almost missed it. All right. When you've got all your green edges and you're satisfied with that, then you can go ahead and tap that selection tool to turn it off. Okay, now the reason we did it this way is that I really wanted this rip on its own layer so that I could create a clipping mask above it. So we're going to select that layer, add a new layer above it, tap it, and select clipping mask. And now we're going to go back over to our colors, double tap in the gray to get 50% gray. And actually, let's go back to our layer here. I know that I'm going to want this dialed down to like something around 20%, maybe 20, let's try 23 just to see where we're at. And then I'm going to go back down and select that texture brush again, the Grunge. And at 50, it's 100%, that's fine. So what I want to do is go along the edge of the green and the white here. And not too much, just a little bit, but I'm trying to give the white a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to just come along the edge, and not every edge, and some of it more than others. And there we go. So now it kind of has this like little edge to it, which is great. Now the thing that really makes this technique pop and look way more realistic is paper texture. So what we're going to do is first create a new layer on top here. And then we're going to come over and we're going to select blue. Let's see, where's blue? Right there. Let's see what kind of blue, maybe like a blue like that color right in there. Not too violet at all. I want it more bluish. And even not cyan, but just right on the edge there. And I want to choose blue, but not black, the darkest blue that I can without it looking too black. And the reason is I've got some yellow for highlighting and I want blue for the shadows. I don't want to go black and white. I want to go yellow and blue. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to, let's see, I did create a new layer. Yep, okay. I'm going to go to my brushes, and then available to my email subscribers is a set called Essentials. And in that set, there are a couple sets inside the set. So a collection, I guess. Essentials for 22, I have a couple of paper overlays. And we're going to choose this craft overlay, and it's just a brush stamp. So we're going to make sure that's at 100%, and then we're just going to tap right in there. And we're going to play around with a blending mode. I suspect that we're going to want something like linear burn. Oh yes. Okay, that looks really good. And here, I'm going to zoom in so you can see what that looks like. So it gives a really nice texture and it just adds to the realism of it. The paper overlay kind of cinches the deal here for me. It really adds realism to the whole entire piece. But so does the pattern. I think the pattern really helps make it seem legit. Like this is what it is. It's not a beach somewhere, for example. It is pattern paper and it's being covered by this ripped piece. Speaking of patterns, if you're interested in learning how to make diagonals so you can use your own pattern, go ahead and tap that video link on the left. However, if you'd like to just know more about patterns in general, go ahead and select the playlist link here on the right. Meanwhile, I hope your day is amazing.